What is going on, everybody? Today is the day. We have finally made it to the start of the 2023 NFL Draft. The wait, the anticipation, the rumors, it's all going to be over, and we're finally going to find out what happens in this draft. Today, I'm going to try to predict what will happen in the first round with my final mock draft of the year. This video will be going up on my main channel and my second channel. So for those of you who don't know and are watching this on my main channel, I have a second channel related to NFL draft content, real life sports, all that stuff. The link is in the description if you want to go ahead and check it out. So as I just said, this is a predictive mock draft, one round with trades. And again, this is not what I would do. I don't necessarily agree with all of these picks, but I'm trying to predict what will happen in what should be a chaotic first round of the draft. This is one of the most unpredictable drafts I feel like we've ever seen outside of the first pick. So it should be a lot of fun. So with the first pick, I have the Carolina Panthers selecting Bryce Young, the quarterback out of the University of Alabama. This feels like the only pick that's set in stone right now. I think Bryce Young is the Panthers guy, and I think he should be their guy. I think he's the most talented quarterback in the draft. And of course, yes, he is a little bit undersized, but he checks the rest of the boxes. Arm talent, accuracy, mobility, poise in the pocket. I think this is the right move here for Carolina. Get yourselves a quarterback who can potentially lead you to the top of the NFC sooner rather than later. That'll bring us to the Texans here at 2. This is one of the most important first-round picks, really in years, because it's going to dictate how the rest of the draft goes. Kind of similarly to the Niners a couple years ago, and they moved up for Trey Lance. That was the top 3 pick, but nobody really had any clue what they were going to do, and that would dictate the rest of the draft. And I feel pretty similarly about this pick. And right now, there are a ton of options Houston could look at. They've toyed with the idea of trading back. I feel like at this point, that's probably not going to happen. But if they stay here, this could be one of 5 players. It could be any of the 3 quarterbacks, Stroud, Levis, or Richardson. Or it could be one of the top 2 pass rushers with Will Anderson or Tyree Wilson. Will Levis is the betting favorite to be the pick, and I'm not buying it. I don't think it's going to happen. I have not really seen Will Levis linked to the Texans specifically. So because of that, I feel like that's just smoke. And I actually have the Texans going defense here with Will Anderson. If this pick is a quarterback, and it very well might be, I think it would be C.J. Stroud from Ohio State. But I have them going defense. I have them going with Will Anderson, who's the cleanest prospect of the draft. The production in the SEC is obviously off the charts. I think he has more long-term upside than people realize. Maybe not as high of a ceiling as, say, Tyree Wilson, but I think the upside with him is there. And again, he checks off all the boxes on and off the field. He's the cleanest prospect in the draft. You know what you're getting with him. In my opinion, this would be the right move for the Texans because I'm not in love with any of the other quarterbacks personally. So this is what I would do. But if they pick one of the QBs, I'm not going to fault them because they are good prospects. So that'll bring us to the Cardinals at 3, and there is a ton of buzz about them trading down here, and this has been a likely trade down partner since we found out the draft order in January. So over the last 4 months, this has been a pick of speculation with trades. However, within the last 24 hours, that talk is really ramping up. There are some teams who appear to be trying to jump the Colts. I think the Tennessee Titans are absolutely in play here. Maybe the Colts are moving up one spot to try to get their guy, and that's what these rumors could be. Maybe there isn't a ton of interest in the 3rd pick. Maybe the Cardinals are trying to get the Colts to move up one spot, get their quarterback. The Cardinals add a mid-round pick or 2 out of it and still get the guy they want at 4. I think the Colts stay put. I don't think the Cardinals get another offer that they really love. So they're going to stay here and pick Tyree Wilson, the edge rusher out of Texas Tech. The hot name with the Cardinals recently has been Paris Johnson, the offensive tackle of Ohio State. And that is certainly possible here. It could be like a Derek Stingley scenario last year where Stingley was really not talked about to the Texans at all until right at the very end. And that could be the case here with Paris Johnson as well. But instead, I had them going with Tyree Wilson, an athletic force who you can build your defense around if he can hit his ceiling. A lot of people are comparing him to Trayvon Walker, and I get it. Both of them have incredible size, athleticism, length, all that. I think Walker probably has Tyree Wilson beat slightly in terms of overall athleticism. But Tyree Wilson in college was a much more productive player than Trayvon Walker was, and Trayvon Walker played with 6 first-round picks on his defense. So I think Tyree Wilson's a little bit more far along than Walker, and I think if Tyree Wilson were in last year's draft, I would be willing to bet he'd be the number 1 pick to the Jacksonville Jaguars. So that's why I am convinced that Tyree Wilson probably will go early. He could go before Will Anderson. I said 2 months ago that's a real possibility. And over the last week, it now really does seem like that's a real possibility. But I have Anderson going 2, Tyree Wilson going 3. Again, a trade here is certainly possible. I feel like, though, if there was a really good trade for the Cardinals, it would have happened by now. Maybe I'm just getting flashbacks as a Lions fan when we had the 3rd pick in 2020, and I really wanted us to trade back, and I was convinced we were, but we didn't. Maybe it's like that all over again. I don't know. So that'll bring us to the Colts at 4. The only other guarantee other than Bryce Young going 1 is that the Colts are going to pick a quarterback. We know that. I would be floored if they didn't. The question is which one. And luckily for the Colts, they have their choice of C.J. Stroud, Will Levis, and Anthony Richardson. I've got them picking C.J. Stroud out of Ohio State. He's the most pro-ready of the group. He's the most accurate. But he's got impressive physical tools that give him probably a higher ceiling than people realize. Maybe not as high of a ceiling as the other 2 quarterbacks who are still on the board. But I think this will be the right choice here for Indianapolis. Get your franchise quarterback, somebody who's going to be able to play right away, and somebody who I do think has plenty of room to grow as well. The Seattle Seahawks at 5. I'm very confident this is going to happen. I am really thinking they're going to pick Jalen Carter, the defensive lineman out of Georgia. I've been confident about this pick for around 3 days now, but my confidence has been validated with him being like minus 300 to be the pick. So in other words, it's probably going to happen. I think this just makes too much sense. Seattle needs some disruptors up front in the middle of their defensive line, and why not draft a kid in Carter who's got all the upside to be great? There are some character concerns with him. We had the incident in January, and that's not just it. There are questions about his laziness and his work ethic and all of that. Can a team tap into that? And I think Seattle is better equipped to do that than just about anybody. The Seahawks have a rich history with drafting questionable character players, and oftentimes it has worked out for them. So I think this would be ideal for Jalen Carter, obviously ideal for Seattle. You're getting a total stud here. Quarterback could be in play. For the Seahawks, I think Anthony Richardson from them would make plenty of sense, and it wouldn't surprise me if he was the selection here, but I ultimately had them opting for Carter. That'll bring up Detroit at 6. I've got them picking Devin Witherspoon, the cornerback out of Illinois. Witherspoon's a little bit undersized, but he's a tough physical corner. He was probably the best defensive back in college football last year. He's got inside and outside versatility, and I do think he would be a nice fit within this culture and a nice fit inside Aaron Glenn's defense. I think there are personally better scenarios for the Lions. Obviously, if you can trade back, great. I still think you can get one of the top 2 corners at, say, like 11 if Tennessee wanted to move up for Anthony Richardson, or if the Eagles wanted to move up for Jalen Carter. Obviously, Carter doesn't make it in this scenario. If somebody wants to move up for Paris Johnson as well, that could also make sense. But I have Detroit sticking and picking, going with Devin Witherspoon. I think he's going to be a good pro, but personally, I think Christian Gonzalez is a slightly better prospect, and I am on the Anthony Richardson to Detroit train. I think that just makes too much sense. I get that Jared Goff is coming off a good year, but personally, if this was me, I would pick Anthony Richardson here for Detroit. Get yourself a quarterback who has a ridiculously high ceiling. Develop him with a genius of an offensive coordinator, one of the best offensive lines in football, a great group of skill position guys, and he doesn't have to play year 1. He can sit behind Jared Goff. I think this would be QB paradise. And for a guy like Anthony Richardson and the ceiling that he has, I think it makes too much sense. I don't think it's going to happen. It could happen, but I would be surprised. So at 7, I think this would be the first real surprise of the draft, and that's the Las Vegas Raiders selecting Will Levis, the quarterback out of the University of Kentucky. I feel like the Raiders are a team who, it's like, yeah, they could pick a quarterback, but it hasn't really been talked about a ton. They have a lot of holes on both sides of the ball, so I would not blame them for passing. But I think Will Levis is going to fit what they look for. Josh McDaniels wants somebody who can operate from the pocket, has a good arm. I think Will Levis can be a solid fit here. And again, he doesn't have to play right away because they signed Jimmy Garoppolo. Maybe they're excited about him, but I think with the upside that Will Levis brings to the table, I think they would, if nothing else, absolutely consider it here. That'll bring us to the 8th pick, and we finally have our first trade of the day. I don't have any trades earlier than this because I feel like it's rare to see trades within the top 5 to 8 picks of the draft because it sort of is generally known what's going to happen within those picks, so teams already kind of know what they're going to do. Now, this year could be different because it seems very unclear what's going to happen at 2, so that's why I would leave the door open for, say, a team like the Cardinals to move down. But personally, I don't think it's going to happen. I think the top few picks are going to stay intact, And the first trade here is Atlanta, moving down with the Tennessee Titans. So Atlanta will receive picks 11, 72, and 147, while the Titans get picks 8 and 113. So who is the player the Titans are trading up for? They have been heavily linked to moving up for a quarterback. I think they really want C.J. Stroud, and they might be trying to get to number 3 to jump the Colts in order to do that. Anthony Richardson's on the board here. He certainly could make sense as well. But I had the Titans passing on a quarterback for Paris Johnson, the offensive tackle out of Ohio State. I don't think they absolutely have to pick a quarterback. It's a new regime. If they're not in love with a QB, they don't need to do it. But I could still see them moving up for Paris Johnson anyway because he fills a really big need there. I think he's going to be regarded as offensive tackle 1 in this year's draft. And the two teams in between Atlanta and Tennessee are the Chicago Bears, who probably would pick Paris Johnson in this scenario, and then the Philadelphia Eagles. If Paris Johnson makes it to 10, again, he is absolutely in play for them. So I think the Titans realize if they want Paris Johnson, they've got to go up and get him. And that's exactly what they're going to do here, giving themselves their new franchise left tackle. With the 9th pick, we've got another trade. This is where Anthony Richardson is going to come off the board, and it's the Seattle Seahawks moving up to get him. So the Chicago Bears will get picks 20, 37, and 83. So the Bears will still pick in the first round. They're going to add 2 day 2 selections. They've added a bazillion day 2 picks with their double trade down, moving from 1 to 9 and then 9 to 20. Seattle will get picks 9 and 133, and with pick 9, they will select Anthony Richardson, the quarterback out of the University of Florida. I've seen some mock drafts where quarterbacks have slipped a little bit, particularly one of Levis or Richardson, and it is certainly possible. I feel like oftentimes the quarterbacks sometimes go a little bit later than we expect, but on the flip side, teams are desperate for having great QBs, and I think Anthony Richardson would make a lot of sense here in Seattle. I think Detroit would be the best landing spot for him, but if not them, Seattle's not too far down the list. They're another team where he can sit behind Geno Smith for a year and learn and develop behind him. Now, it does seem like the Seahawks are really going all out on winning, so that would be the reason to pass on a quarterback and just continue to stick with Geno. But I think they're going to really tempt themselves with the idea of Anthony Richardson's ceiling. And Geno Smith's contract does have an easy out after the first year, so they can let him go after 2023 and then hand the reins to Anthony Richardson. That'll bring up the Philadelphia Eagles at 10. They go with Peter Skoronski, the offensive lineman out of Northwestern. Howie Roseman loves his linemen, man. Now, they do have 2 good tackles already. Jordan Mailata, who's locked up for a while. Lane Johnson is older, but still very, very good. And he's also locked up for a while. So Skoronski would likely play guard right away. I know they've invested multiple day 2 selections on interior offensive linemen recently. Landon Dickerson's playing left guard. He was really good last year. Cam Jurgens would likely be a backup once again, with Skoronski probably starting at right guard. He's probably the most polished offensive lineman in the draft. The question is, will he be able to hold up at tackle long term, or with his lack of length, is he going to have to slide over to guard, where he could be a very good player right away? If I was the Eagles, I would pick Bijan Robinson. I think he's the player who gives them the best chance to win a Super Bowl over the next few years, but I understand the long-term thinking here of wanting to keep the offensive line good, because you got to build upon the trenches. You need a good offensive line, and you need a good defensive line to be a successful team in this league. So that'll bring up the Falcons here at 11. They move down a few spots. They add some picks from Tennessee, and they still get the guy I would have given them at 8, and that's Bijan Robinson, the running back out of Texas. I'm pretty convinced Bijan will end up as a Falcon. Atlanta has focused on best player available over positional value in the Terry Fontenot era, picking Kyle Pitts at 4, a good example of that. Now, I understand they have Tyler Algier at running back, a player who I do like quite a bit. He was drafted on day 3 last year out of BYU, and he had a good rookie season. He ran for 1,000 yards. He really played well down the stretch. I have him on one of my dynasty teams, so I'm kind of hoping this doesn't happen. But if it does, I would get it. Part of the reason why Arthur Smith was successful in Tennessee as the offensive coordinator was because of their run game. The Titans had a great offensive line, and they had an elite running back in the backfield with Derrick Henry. Look at Atlanta. They've got a really underrated offensive line. They've got some good players there. Tyler Algier is a good running back, but if you can get somebody special in that backfield like Bijan Robinson, I think that's something that they would really want to do, and that offense would be nasty. So that'll bring us to number 12, and we've got another trade. So the Packers and Patriots are both teams who could look at Jackson Smith and Jigba here, along with the Texans as well at number 12. But I've got the New York Jets moving up and getting him. So the Texans will acquire picks 15 and 112, while the Jets will get picks 12, 161, and 201. So the Jets actually add in terms of total picks here, but the Texans move down and they get a better day 3 pick in the process. So Jackson Smith-Njigba will be added to the New York offense. The Jets' receiving core is solid. Obviously, Garrett Wilson's fantastic. He's a legit number 1. Alan Lazard, they gave somewhat big money to on the outside. McCole Hardman's a talented playmaker, but do you really trust him as your slot receiver? Slide Jackson Smith-Njigba in there, and that pass game with Aaron Rodgers leading the way would be pretty filthy. I cannot lie. Reuniting JSN with his former college teammate, Garrett Wilson. So that'll bring up the Packers at 13. There's a lot of different scenarios I could see them going. I wouldn't rule out Jackson Smith-Njigba here, but I don't know if I can confidently say they'd pick a receiver in the first round. Tight end is very possible. Dalton Kincaid certainly in play along with Michael Mayer. I think offensive line could be an option. Broderick Jones, Darnell Wright, they could both work. Green Bay likes to address the pass rush early, and I think that's what they're going to do here with Nolan Smith out of Georgia. He's a little bit undersized, but he's got really good athletic tools. His football character as well is off the charts, and he's a Georgia player. This would be the 4th straight Georgia defensive player who would be one of the Packers' first-round picks. So they're keeping up with the trends. This is a very Green Bay pick. Broderick Jones to New England here at 14. I've been saying for a while, this Patriots pick is one of the most interesting in the draft for me because there's a ton of different ways they could go. All the positions that the Patriots would look at, this draft is very deep in terms of offensive tackle, pass rush, corner, maybe receiver. This is where the receivers would start to go off the board. So there's plenty of guys I think they would look at here. I think they'd consider Zay Flowers from Boston College, Jackson Smith-Njigba if he fell here. Pass rush is certainly an option. I like Lucas Van Ness here a lot. They could look at the secondary. Christian Gonzalez is still on the board. That would be a good pick. Deonte Banks, Joey Porter Jr., all very good options for them. But they could look to add some help on the offensive line. And Broderick Jones probably has the highest upside, certainly as a pass protector of any offensive lineman in this draft class. So I think New England's going to like that. The Texans at 15 run the card up. This is a total steal. Christian Gonzalez out of Oregon. I think he's the best cornerback prospect in the draft. He's got size, length, ball skills, and consistent improvement over the past year at Oregon and before that at the University of Colorado. Corner may not be the biggest need for the Texans. They did draft Derek Stingley in the top 3 last year, but you're going to give Derek Stingley a long-term running mate, and the value here is too good to pass up. At 16, the Washington Commanders select Deonte Banks out of Maryland. His name has risen faster than anybody over the last couple of months, cementing himself as a top half of the first-round pick, keeping him local here to the Commanders, who are probably upset that Christian Gonzalez goes 1 pick before them, but Deonte Banks is a good consolation prize. The Pittsburgh Steelers, with the 17th pick, select Joey Porter Jr., the cornerback out of Penn State. This pick makes too much sense. The Steelers need a corner. Obviously, they had the family lineage with Joey Porter being a great linebacker there for many, many years, and now they're getting his son in the building. I think this is probably a corner or an offensive tackle. The Steelers are rumored to be trying to move up for one of the offensive tackles, which wouldn't surprise me. I could also see them moving up for Jalen Carter as well, another team who historically has done well with questionable character players in the past. So I think that's certainly in play here, but I have them sticking here at 17. The offensive tackles are coming off the board. They could look at a guy like, say, Darnell Wright here, but instead I have them going with Porter to add to the secondary. Detroit at 18 gets Lucas Van Ness out of Iowa. There's a number of different options here the Lions could look at. I know they're thinking about trading down, which please do. That'd be great. Corner's probably off the table with Devin Witherspoon at 6, but there are some other options here. If Bijan was on the board, I think he'd be in play. The tight ends are in play, although please God, don't draft another tight end in the first round, for Christ's sake. I think guard is in play. This is probably the ceiling for a guy like Osiris Torrance out of Florida. I think that could make sense. But I think the Lions are going to go back to defense here, looking to add to the pass rush. Interior defensive line is also in play. Kalijah Kancey, Brian Brzee, Maisie Smith, even Adetomiwa Adebawore, all guys who could be possible here. But I think Van Ness is a better prospect than all of those guys. He's a little bit raw, but we saw the flashes with him at Iowa. Even though he was technically not a starter and more of the rotational pass rusher for them, he had the production that you look for in a high draft pick, and he's got the athleticism to suggest that he's going to continue to grow and be really good. At 19, I have another trade. Brian Branch makes too much sense for Jacksonville's defense, so they're going to move up here with Tampa Bay, who doesn't have many super obvious selections here. So the Jaguars will be acquiring picks 19 and 175, while the Bucks get picks 24, 88, and 208. So Jacksonville gets their guy, Brian Branch, home run pick, put him in the slot, maybe put him at safety. You can use him in a variety of different ways. It just makes too much sense. Darnell Wright at 20 to the Bears. I think Chicago would be really happy with this scenario if this is ultimately what ends up happening. They moved down 11 spots. They added 2 and a 3 along with this pick. And they get Darnell Wright, who would absolutely be in consideration at 9. I believe he is the current betting favorite to go at 9. So they end up landing him at 20. I could see him going earlier than this, but this is how the board plays out. Another guy who I think could go quite a bit earlier here is Zay Flowers out of Boston College, the wide receiver to the Los Angeles Chargers. He's getting some real buzz to be a top 15 pick or so. Tennessee, Houston, New England, all in play. I don't think that happens, though. I think he makes his way into the 20s, but the Chargers are going to capitalize and scoop him up. He's a little bit undersized, but he's got the physicality to play on the outside. He's a technician as a route runner, and I think Keenan Allen would be the perfect mentor for him. At 22, we've got another trade. The tight ends are falling a little bit. There's a good shot the top tight end goes earlier than this. Maybe Green Bay at 13, maybe Washington at 16. Hopefully not Detroit at 18, but I suppose it's possible. But Dallas is going to move up here to get Dalton Kincaid with the Baltimore Ravens. So Dallas moves up 4 spots, and the two teams will swap a 2 and a 3. So the Cowboys will get this pick and Baltimore's third rounder, 86, while the Ravens move down. They go to 26, but they also get Dallas's second rounder, number 58. So the Cowboys get Dalton Kincaid, a special receiver, big kid, 6'4", 240 pounds. You can put him in the slot. You can put him in line at tight end. He's certainly a willing blocker. He has the back injury, which is a little bit of a question mark, but on the field, he's really talented. Minnesota at 23. I think there is a strong chance the Vikings move out of this pick, whether they move up for one of the quarterbacks. If Will Levis or Anthony Richardson or even Stroud were to drop out of the top 10, I think Minnesota's making calls. They're trying to go up and get one of those guys. If that doesn't happen, like in this scenario, I could also see them looking to potentially move down. They only have 5 picks this year, similar to Baltimore, who also only has 5 picks. But I have Minnesota sticking here and going with Jordan Addison, the wide receiver out of USC. Adam Thielen is gone, and Jordan Addison is the perfect replacement. He's not the biggest, he's not the fastest, but he's polished, man. He's a good route runner, good hands, good after the catch. He can play inside and out. Has a lot of similarities to Adam Thielen, so he would seamlessly slide right into this offense and would be a great complement for Justin Jefferson. I think this is the earliest that we could see Hendon Hooker off the board. I think he is absolutely in play here for Minnesota. There's been some rumors of him going higher. Tennessee at 11, Houston at 12, Washington at 16. I don't buy it. I don't think those teams are that stupid. I think this would be the earliest that we see Hendon Hooker off the board. Minnesota, after them, we've got the Bucks, who are on the clock here at 24. They move down with Jacksonville, and they get Anton Harrison, the offensive tackle out of Oklahoma. I have a gut feeling Anton does end up in the first round. Now, with Donovan Smith gone, we know they need a tackle. They might slide Tristan Wirfs over to left tackle. In this scenario, by picking Harrison, you'll be able to keep Tristan Wirfs on the right side if you want. Harrison's a little bit rough around the edges, but I think the upside with him is definitely there. We've got another trade here at 25. The New York Giants will move out of the first round. It's the Arizona Cardinals moving up. So the Giants will get picks 34 and 66, while the Cardinals get 25 and a 4th round pick in next year's draft. The Giants were hoping that Jordan Addison would fall here. With him going to Minnesota, they're going to move down. They're going to get 2 day 2 selections, and they'll pick at the top of the 2nd round. The player the Cardinals are moving up for is Emmanuel Forbes out of Mississippi State. There is some buzz that he could go earlier than this, maybe as high as the 3rd corner off the board, ahead of Banks and Porter. Now, I don't think that will happen, but I am pretty sure that Forbes will end up in the first round. His ball skills are fantastic. I mean, his ability to find the football and make plays is really impressive. In coverage, he's quite solid as well, but the question with him is his size. He's pretty slim. He's only 166 pounds, standing at 6'1". I think teams believe that he will be able to handle the physicality of NFL receivers, which is why I think he will go in the first round, and the Cardinals really improved their defense with first Tyree Wilson and now Emmanuel Forbes. So the Ravens traded down here to 26, and they get DJ Turner out of Michigan, and he has gotten basically no first-round buzz for the most part, but I could see it. His name is starting to creep up higher and higher on draft boards here over these last few days, and I think the fit in Baltimore could make sense. They obviously need a corner. DJ Turner's got inside and outside versatility. Obviously, he tested very well at the combine, 4.27, 40-yard dash. And I think he'd be a good fit on this Baltimore defense. They get to move down. They had a second-round pick. I think this could make sense. So we've got another trade here at 27, the last trade of the day. It's a pretty simple one here. The Bills are going to move back. They will acquire picks 38 and 70, while the Raiders get pick 27. Similarly with the Giants, I don't think there's a very obvious pick here for Buffalo. I think the positions they would look at are offensive tackle, defensive line, linebacker, or wide receiver, with maybe defensive back being the wild card. I don't think that would be super likely. But I think this range is really deep in every position the Bills are looking at. So why not move down? You had another day 2 pick, while the Raiders come up and grab Michael Mayer, the tight end out of Notre Dame. I think one of these teams, the Bengals or the Saints, would certainly consider Mayer here at the end of the first round. Getting yourself a true safety magnet in the passing game for Will Levis, I think, would be pretty smart. Mayer may not be the most exciting player, but he's a guy who's going to be able to produce as soon as he signs the contract. At pick 28, we've got a really interesting selection here with Jahmyr Gibbs, the running back out of the University of Alabama, going to the Cincinnati Bengals. So Joe Mixon's status for next season is currently up in the air amongst legal questions. Even if he stays with the Bengals next year, running back could make sense. Mixon is starting to show some signs of age, and I think losing Samaje Perine this offseason is a bigger deal than people think. Perine played well for the Bengals last year, and they're going to need another guy with Joe Mixon. And if Joe Mixon's not there, well, then that's not good. You're going to need a running back even more so. Gibbs is a dynamic playmaker out of the backfield who can be on the field every down. He is a dynamic pass catcher, and it does seem like when it's all said and done, he will end up in the first round. At 29, the Saints get Myles Murphy out of Clemson, the pass rusher. Murphy was a super highly regarded recruit, and early in his Clemson career, he looked really good, but he did not play his best football last year in 2022, which causes him to slip a little bit, but I think somebody will take a shot on the upside here in the first round. Why not a team who historically takes a lot of risks with the New Orleans Saints, who are willing to take the big swing? At pick 30, the Philadelphia Eagles select Adetomiwa Adebawore, the defensive lineman out of Northwestern. Running back is in play here if Jahmyr Gibbs is on the board. He is not, so I have them going with another Northwestern player. They drafted Peter Skoronski at 10, and now they get Adebawore here at 30. Again, Howie Roseman knows you got to build in the trenches. Adebawore is a little bit raw, but he is a ridiculous athlete. He's a little bit of a tweener, but I think he would fit nicely in the Eagles' defense as someone who would keep his hand in the dirt next to the nose tackle, Jordan Davis. So I think this would be a solid pick here for the Eagles. And I think it is a little bit bold having Adebawore go ahead of guys like Mazie Smith, Brian Brzee, and Kalijah Kancey. I think there's a good shot that at least one or two of those guys goes before Adebawore, but this is how the board ultimately plays out. And then Kansas City at 31, wrapping it up here with Will McDonald, the pass rusher out of Iowa State. I do think there's a good shot McDonald does end up here in the first round. Iowa State kind of misutilized him, but I think the upside is there. He's got ridiculous explosiveness. He performed well at the Senior Bowl. His reps with Darnell Wright were pretty good. He certainly won that battle. And I could see Kansas City wanting to take a shot on him and looking to develop him. This will be Iowa State's first round pick since 1973. That is by far the longest active streak for a Power 5 school to not have a first round pick. So there you go. That'll do it. My official first round 2023 NFL mock draft. I'm really excited to see how tonight is going to play out. Is this mock draft going to age well? Probably not. There's going to be one big trade, maybe up to 3, that ruins the entire thing. But hey, that's the fun of it, right? It's supposed to be unpredictable. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you are new. And again, if you want to check out more draft content, make sure to check out my second channel. The link is in the description. And if you're watching this on the second channel, then cool. Make sure to like the video, I guess. Peace out.